Hey, I'm Mikko, and for this painting the beginning took a really long time, just because I didn't have any idea what I want to paint. So what you see me doing in this first half of the painting video is just scribbling different colors, and this is not just like random paint strokes. I don't think that this time is going to be wasted, because I learned this from making concept art pieces for so long that coming up with ideas is work too, and it's something that you have to actively search for. You can't just like sit on your living room floor in lotus position and wait for the great idea to flow through the window. That sounds poetic and wonderful, but rarely that is the case, especially when you're working with very tight deadlines. So you have to have actual methods of how to come up with ideas. For me, doing this type of painting is really helpful because I am searching for an idea, and it's not just something that would be a picture. I'm not just looking for shapes that could turn into an illustration. I'm looking for an idea that I can emotionally connect to. This is because the painting is going to take so much time and effort that I want to make sure that it is something that I have enough passion for, that I can give it all my time and attention, because it's going to require patience, it's going to require time and just sitting down and working for hours before I can see the final product. At this point, I'm pretty sure that I'm going to do a massive multi-level house that has all these different architectural features, and you can see that I am definitely sure that I want to have these palm trees in the background, because I get really excited about having that silhouette fill in that empty space on the top corners of the image. So at this point I'm pretty sure that this is going to be the painting, but as you have seen the thumbnail, I'm going to delete all of this because it just wasn't clicking with me. I couldn't get excited about it. So I took out all of that architectural information and I flattened it down to this one big roof. And I simplified everything to this like one core message. The architecture is inspired by old Norwegian architecture style. There are still some historical houses that are preserved from this era. They are a bit different because they have more ornate wooden features, but I wanted to have like a simplified version of that and maybe combine it with this sort of like hay bale roof that isn't part of the architecture style, but I just thought that this would be an interesting combination of textures, because the wooden parts are going to be so thick and heavy to have something that has a very different texture, because it's all going to be pretty much told in silhouette anyway in the end. So I wanted to have some contrasting features there. And at this phase you see that I thought that I'm going to add all of these windows to the side of the house, but in the end I even took away that detail. Even though that would have been interesting to design the architecture that way, I think having just a hole in the roof tells the story better that I want to tell here in this illustration. So this search, I have a lot of patience for it. At this phase, when I have an idea and I have something that is already presentable, this isn't a quick thing. We might be in the beginning of this video, but at this point I have been painting for 60 minutes already, and most of that 60 minutes was just me spreading around different color on canvas and trying to squint at it. The process is a pretty similar one if you're looking at clouds in the sky and trying to come up with what shapes could be close to those cloud shapes. It's the same type of process, and for me this seems to work. But there are also other methods that I think are just as efficient. You just have to find one that fits you. One way to do the same process is to have a mind map and just do 3 word associations. Just think of ideas that are interesting to you and just write out different words that are close to that topic and something that could be connected to the idea that you have in mind, and then expand on it and see if those combinations bring some new ideas in your head. And of course, I have already done this video on thumbnails. I'll put a card here so that you can see it, or I'll link it in the description also for those who are watching this on the phone. Thumbnails are something that I think a lot of people do completely wrong. I have said this for many students, that I think the way the students usually do thumbnails is that they are super afraid of other people seeing their work, so they think that the thumbnails have to be like mini paintings. This is not useful for the purpose of thumbnails. This is not idea generation process. So I recommend doing thumbnails in as quick way as you can possibly do. You don't have to show them to anybody else, and you definitely don't have to feel like you're doing thumbnails wrong if they are not super skillful. If you look at my thumbnail video, I purposefully wanted to use the first thumbnail set that I came up with in 15 minutes. And that is because I wanted to show you that my thumbnails are just scribbles, really, because I am just looking for those shapes that could turn into an illustration that I can get excited about. But if you make the thumbnailing process so difficult for yourself that it just doesn't justify the time used for it, because if you do very detailed thumbnails, that is going to take time, and that is not helpful when you just want to come up with an idea. You're just searching for one thing that you can attach to. And for me, that idea has to be something that I can emotionally connect with somehow on some level. This is hard to explain because it doesn't have to make sense. I don't fully understand. I haven't guessed what this illustration is about, but when I started committing to these details, what I want it to be, I didn't fully understand what this is about. It just speaks to me on an emotional level, and that is enough. For me, this is really important because I want to feel like I'm working for some purpose, and that small hunch is enough because I can feel like it's going to be worth it when it's done, because the image is going to explain what it means when it's time. It doesn't have to be when it's finished. Maybe it just requires for me to have the distance of time to understand what all of this was about. And that's enough for me, at least, to motivate me to start painting and start working on something that is going to take probably several days. This took about 4 to 5 hours in total to paint, but the beginning part is a really huge time investment in all of this process because the idea is really something that matters to me. I guess there are more ways than just these mind maps and scribbles and thumbnails how you can come up with different ideas, but these are just my main ways of coming up with different concepts of how to start an illustration. I never start one of these scribbling sessions without coming up with an idea at the end, and that has just come through practice because I have gone through the process so many times that I have been able to let go of the idea that the scribbles have to be something that is presentable and something that I would show to other people for them to judge. I know that the scribbles serve a different purpose, and therefore I don't try to give value judgments on my own sketches in this phase because the idea is more important than just getting stuck on details. If you start doing details too soon, it's going to be really hard to edit the image later and move around different things, especially here, since as you can see, I'm using the perspective assist to add these beams. They have to be in the right position. This is the type of detail that I would not be able to do if I hadn't already decided pretty clearly where the main corners of this house are, because that informs me where these supporting beams inside the house are going to be, and that's a detail that I won't be able to edit later. By the way, here I'm using the power button trick again, and this is just to check values, and I'm making some edits this way. Notice that the whole Procreate is now in black and white mode. I didn't paint with black and white at any point in this phase. As I was color picking with colors, and I was painting with colors. I wasn't painting with black and white in that phase at all. When you find an idea that connects with you somehow, there is one more challenge, and that is not talking yourself out of it, because it might be that the idea is very quiet and you might already have like 50 reasons why you shouldn't be doing it, or how you are not skillful enough to do that idea on canvas. Try your best to not talk yourself out of this idea, because the idea itself has a really quiet voice and you really have to pay attention to hear what it has to say, but the other voices that are telling you to ignore it and do something else, or that you're not good enough to do that idea, those voices, they are extremely loud. And it can be really hard to focus in that moment that the quiet voice is the one that you should be focusing on, when the loud voice that tells you to stop can be so much more powerful and louder, and it can seem like it's more important because it's also trying to scare you these so-called facts about your own skill level. I always feel like it's a great shame when an artist walks away from the idea mid-painting, when you just have this kind of ugly face in the painting and you feel like, okay, this might have been a great painting if somebody else did it, but I'm just not good enough to do this. I feel like that's the exact moment that you should like double down and try as hard as you can to do the painting anyway, because it's right that moment when the idea is so close to being there and the painting is almost able to tell you what it wanted to say in the first place. And I'm not saying this so that other people are missing out on your great paintings, but you are missing out on the idea what the painting wanted to say to you, and to have this piece in your portfolio or in your gallery or however you're storing your paintings. You might not understand it now, but when you look back on it few years later or few months later, you will understand that these things were going on in my life, and now I see this because I have this painting that makes it all the more clear to understand my own inner thoughts. So that's why when people say that I can't finish this painting because my skill level isn't good enough for it, I'm like, you're missing the point. It's not for everyone else to appreciate, it's also for you, and you are the one that can benefit the most from it. So keep going. And if you just think about pure skill level, that is the exact moment when you are facing a challenge that you want to create something that your current skill level doesn't match. Therefore, this should be like a big red flag that here is the perfect opportunity to grow, because you have this taste gap that you understand what you want the painting to be. That's already a clear road where you should travel. So you only have to go through the struggle of getting there, because you know the way, but you don't have the tools to get there yet. So if you just keep going, that is the exact moment, and that is the exact painting that can teach you the most about what type of paintings you are the best at painting, because you have the passion to get there. You see the goal, and it has been very motivating to you at one point. So this is the type of painting that you probably should be doing in the future. But if you walk away from it, you will never get technical skills where you can reach those ideas in a way that other people can also enjoy it and other people can understand the emotional impact of your piece. So it's worth going there. I'm not saying this to tell you that you're going to make every piece successful, because that is just not the case. I don't want this channel to become like a Bob Ross version of digital art that I tell people that painting is easy. It's not. It's really difficult, but the reward is definitely worth it. And I think the people that come and see my videos, they have that creative urge that they want to paint, but they feel like they need some type of permission or to be skillful enough to paint and to start. And nobody's going to tell you that you can start being an artist, that you can start painting if you feel like it. This type of magical moment is not going to happen, so you have to give that permission to yourself. Or if you need me to say it, I'm just gonna say that like you should start painting already. A common reason for quitting a painting is that it got personal, and you feel like your skill level makes an important message look silly or pretentious or both. I don't care if this is true. I mean, art inherently is pretentious. You are trying to make an object like piece of paper to be more valuable than it is. That's pretty much the definition of pretentious. I don't care if it's not the best painting ever. I'm saying that make it anyway. Don't make it just for anybody. Make it also for yourself. You don't need anyone's permission to paint about your life. You're entitled to express your feelings like everybody else. And you're as entitled to your feelings as somebody who has a better skill level at like depicting their own thoughts. And this is a language, and you have started studying the language, and you are going to make mistakes along the way. But if you don't practice, you won't ever be able to speak in that language, and other people won't be able to understand you. So of course the process is going to take time. This is why patience is important. By the way, at this phase I was kind of like considering if I should like delete the child and leave the woman there alone, but then I thought that like somebody on the internet is thinking that I am burning the child in the house fire, and I don't want word about that going around, because obviously I was already way too excited about burning this building. Everybody that I told about this painting idea, they had this strange look at me in some moment, because apparently I'm way too excited about burning this house, and it's disturbing. But I love painting fire. It's so relaxing. I don't know, I shouldn't say that. I'm missing the proper politically correct words. I shouldn't be excited about burning houses, but painting fire for me is really enjoyable. And this is not the first burning thing that I am painting, and every time I get super excited about, I don't know, there's just something about fire that I think is interesting to photograph, it's interesting to look at, and it's super fun to paint. Because it doesn't really have its own rules. You can have your own style, as stylized as you want, and people will probably still understand that when you're painting fire, that it's fire. Like it's orange and it's glowy. That's all. All the foreground elements that I thought about for this painting, I just kept cutting them away because I want people to be looking at the main point in this illustration. And usually when you have a story like this to tell, it's usually stronger when you cut elements out of it. I know that some people think that I do a lot of details, but I think about the details that if they are relevant to tell the story and to build the mood, because if the mood isn't there, then I think I have failed. So for me, that usually means just deleting ruthlessly things and objects and elements in the piece that are not supporting the ideas that I want to have. All of these window frames I am making by just making one window frame from the front view, and then I use the perspective guides to align them to their proper places. This is just to save time, because at this point the painting has taken already several days, and I was really surprised by how much work the wooden beams in this house just took. Constant paint overs, because the texture is really rich, but I can only get there by painting the color several times in different hues. They're almost the same hues, but they are just slight variations. But because this brush has this sort of reiki quality to it, it's not fully covering everything that I paint over. So that's why those several layers of paint all show through each other, and that creates this sort of like hue richness in the surface that I was just, I guess, going for. And I know when I have it, when I see it, and in these instances I will just keep painting until I get what I want. When I was describing this painting to Brian, I think I used the exact words of I like burning things, and maybe in that instance I should have just elaborated myself more. This is so going to be ranked down in the YouTube algorithm like there's no tomorrow. Also, if this is the first painting video you see from me, this is going to be a strange experience for you. I promise I don't set things on fire in real life on most days. Because the main color in this piece is orange, I wanted to contrast that heat with these sort of patches of snow on the ground, but the hard part was finding the right gray and orange and red hues that look cold enough. There are a lot of gray looking brushstrokes on that house, but they are actually just variations of orange, but they are desaturated. In these instances, like where most of the painting is covered in this bright red orange, the grays are going to look very cold and bluish, even if they are orange, but just incredibly desaturated orange. That's enough to make them look cold. This is one of those like more advanced tricks to pull off, because it can be really fiddly to find that exact right hue that creates this effect of tricking the eye into thinking one color is another color. And it's just through trial and error for me, painting over and over again on top of the same surface until I get the effect that I want. But the color changes are so small that it might seem sometimes like I'm not doing anything at all and just painting with the same color over the same surface. But when I zoom in, and this is a really high resolution picture, when working with this type of resolution, when you have the high resolution version of the image and if you have a print of the image, you will see these sort of details very well, and in those instances I think that those prints kind of last longer somehow. If I have a print on my wall that has detail like this, I think it's enjoyable to keep looking at it and finding these sort of new textures and small nuances of color, but that doesn't mean that it has to have a lot of detail. That's a different thing. In the end, I'm adding a lot of sparks to the background, fire and smoke, because there are these low contrast areas that I want the sparks to kind of hold that empty space. It's not detail that is interesting to look at, but it just has that small hint of contrast that holds up the empty space that would otherwise look quite dull. I guess what I'm also going for here is this like contrast between something that is structured and something that is just inherently chaos, like fire itself, and like these people in front of probably their own home that is now gone. So there's this contrast between safety and uncertainty. This is also the last piece that I'm making for Art is My Real Home challenge. This has been an incredible journey for me, and I want to thank each one of you for being part of this challenge. I highly recommend that you check out this hashtag on Instagram. I have made this story circle on my main Instagram page where you can see every one of the pieces from all types of different kinds of artists who participate in this challenge, and it has been so great to see that all of you have approached the challenge in so different ways. I don't ask a lot of stuff on this channel, but I would like to ask you to check out these artists' work and please leave a comment or like to their pages for just being creative and showing up for the art community in this difficult time. Because like many of you, I've had my own difficulties of staying creative and keep producing work, but seeing how many of you have joined this challenge, it has been a great motivation for me to do my own part and be part of this journey. And I hope that this is something that we can all do together sometime again. But for now, it's time to burn this all down, and this is orange. Thank you for watching this video. I'm Mikko, and this is a channel about painting and creativity. If that's something you're interested in, feel free to subscribe, and I will see you in the next video. Bye!